Hey everyone, welcome back to Voiceverse Productions. I'm your narrator, Professor Audios, and I'm thrilled to present the debut episode of Samurai Forever, a thrilling crossover fanfic between My Hero Academia and Power Rangers. On this channel, we specialize in immersive storytelling that combines the best of both worlds. Get ready for heart-pounding action, epic battles, and heroic adventures. Whether you're a fan of MHA, Power Rangers, or just love a good crossover, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. In today's video, our heroes face their greatest challenge yet as they embark on an unforgettable journey, but I should mention that I ran into some problems with my usual T2's app because it kept saying error, so I had to use a different software to allow you guys to hear this peak of fiction. Without further ado, let's dive into Samurai Forever and witness the fusion of two iconic universes. Act 1, Samurai Origins. Izuku Midoriya's head went blank for a moment. One moment he was being suffocated by a villain whose body comprised almost entirely of some sort of sludge-like substance, the next he was saved by a blur. When he finally regained consciousness, the green-haired boy sat in stunned silence as he saw the legend himself. All Might was standing right in front of him. "Oh, thank goodness. Thought we lost you there," the number one hero said, his trademark smile beaming as the teen stared at him with wide eyes. "Wow, he's actually here. I need an autograph." Izuku then went to grab his notebook only to find that, he already did it. As Izuku began furiously thanking All Might for the autograph, All Might was preparing to make his leave. "All in a day's work, young man. Now I must bring our friend here to the authorities," he said, patting a pair of soda bottles that contained the sludge villain that was about to kill the Greenade. Is that it? Wait, I need to ask you a question." Izuku ran towards All Might. He almost grabbed his leg, but he was milliseconds too late. "Thanks for all the support." With that, All Might jumped off, leaving Izuku behind. Wow. Izuku sat on the ground for a few seconds, still in shock that he actually met All Might in person. He was a bit deterred that he wasn't able to ask him if he could be a hero, but he was happy to be able to meet him in person. After a minute of sitting there, Izuku got back up and continued his walk home. As he walked, Izuku thought back on what everyone in his life had said to him about being a hero. "Sorry kid, it ain't happening. I'm sorry Izuku, I'm sorry." He still can't face reality. "Don't you dare you get into UA, nerd." Izuku was tired of the world constantly pushing him back. He couldn't be a hero? Fine. He'd still do good with a smile on his face. 5 months later, Izuku sat in his room studying for exams. Even if he wasn't aiming for a hero course anymore, he still wanted to get into UA's courses. He didn't know the first thing about mechanics or engineering, so that ruled out the support course, and he didn't exactly have the best financial skills, which could be seen by all the All Might merch in his room, so the business course was out too. That just left the general studies course. As he was studying, his mother walked in. "Sorry to bother you Izuku, but can you help me tidy up the closet?" "No problem mum," Izuku said, wanting to be helpful. The closet was filled with clothes and heavy boxes, but it was relatively easy to clean out. As they were moving everything, Izuku noticed something in the corner, a small black chest with a gold symbol on top. "Hey mum, what's that?" I don't know." She didn't know what the box was. For all she knew, it was one of her husband Isashi's possessions. Izuku decided to take the chest to his room to look at it further. Upon opening it, he found several small items. A small pentagonal box, a red disc, a small flip phone and a scroll. Izuku first looked at the box. It had a mechanical look to it and had the kanji for fire, Huo, on it. He then looked at the disc. It had a repeating pattern on it, but he couldn't exactly make it out. He then looked at the flip phone. It was black and red and was a bit bulky, but nothing out of the ordinary, so he flipped it open. Nothing weird at first glance, but after applying slight pressure at the sides, the phone unfolded and what appeared to be the end of a paintbrush popped out at the top. "Oh geez, what did I do?" Izuku jumped back from the sudden transformation. After a second, Izuku noticed a glow coming from the brush. He made a brushing motion with the phone and a holographic streak of red came from it. Izuku then looked at the pentagonal box and decided to paint the kanji on it. Upon completing the symbol, it solidified with a white outline. Izuku then went for another stroke, but instead, he was engulfed in a bright red light. When his eyes adjusted, Izuku looked down to see he was now wearing a strange outfit. Red boots with a black stripe at the top, black lower body, golden belt with a circular buckle, a sword in a sheath on his left, white gloves with a black stripe at the top, a black stripe going down the red torso that resembled a GI, and the same symbol now in gold on the left of his chest. Izuku looked at a mirror on his nightstand to see he was now wearing a helmet with the kanji now becoming a visor. Then Izuku began panicking. What the? He then began trying to get the suit off of him, grabbing at the fabric and trying to find a way to remove the helmet. "Izuku, is everything alright?" In his panic, the noise alerted his mother that something was wrong. Everything's fine." Everything was not fine, but Izuku knew that if she walked in and saw him like this, she'd probably pass out. As her footsteps approached the door, Izuku got desperate. How do I get this thing off me? Go away. Vanish. Power down." In a red flash, the suit disappeared. "Izuku." Inko opened the door to see her son flustered. "Izuku, what happened?" "I saw a spider." Izuku wasn't gonna tell her what happened, especially if he didn't know what happened himself. After she left, Izuku looked at the final item in the chest, the scroll. He unrolled it to reveal the same symbol on the chest and outfit. Below it was a set of coordinates. After a quick internet search he found that they led to the forest surrounding Musutafu. Izuku decided that the next morning he'd get some answers. The next morning, after a half-an-hour-long train ride, Izuku finally got to the surrounding Korsen forest. He began his hike through the rocky terrain. He didn't know what he would find, but he was sure he'd get answers. As he got closer to the destination, he could see something through the tree line. When he got near the end of the path, he was able to see it in full. The main building was made mostly of wood with some areas made of concrete. The perimeter was surrounded by a large wood fence with a giant gate. What caught Izuku's attention was the gate. At the top was the same symbol on the chest. He walked up and pushed the gate open, stepping into the large courtyard. There wasn't much there that couldn't be seen outside the gate. The only thing notable was a training ground with a few practice dummies strewn around. As Izuku walked in further, the gate suddenly slammed behind him. What the? As Izuku turned to see the gate shut, he began to hear the sound of drums. Izuku was then surrounded by figures dressed entirely in black, brandishing white banners with the same symbol on them. "Who are you?" Izuku spun around to see a man walking out of the main building. He was old and sporting gold and brown robes. "Speak." I'm Izuku Midoriya," Izuku sheepishly responded. "Izuku Midoriya, state your business." Izuku reached into his backpack and pulled out the chest. "I found this in my home. I think it's a family heirloom." The man stared at the chest for a moment. The Shiba family crest. Could he be? He then turned his attention to one of the black-clad figures. "You there? Check the records." He then returned his gaze to the teen. "And you, come with me." The two walked inside, followed by the figures. Who are you, and what is this place?" Izuku asked. "I am G. Kusakabe, but you will call me Mentor, and this is the Shiba House. This is the world's first line of defense against the Nilok. Nilok, corrupt ones from another world, hell-bent on the destruction of this one." G continued. "Centuries ago, the 17th head of the Shiba clan and his team battled the Nilok leader to a standstill and was able to seal them back to the netherworld." "What happened after they were sealed away?" Izuku asked. "After he sealed them away, he and his team parted ways to live normal lives in peace. But over the last few decades, cracks have been appearing in our world more and more. It's only a matter of time until the Nilok make their return." The two entered the main room. It was rather large with red walls and the same symbol on the wall opposite the entrance. In the center was a table with 3 chairs on either side. At the head of the table was a seat of honor with the symbol hanging over it. "What's that symbol?" Izuku asked. "It is the Shiba family crest," G explained. One of the figures then stumbled into the room with a scroll clutched in his hand. He ran over to G and handed it to him. "Thank you." G took the scroll and looked through it. His eyes began to widen at the information on it. "I can't believe it." What is it?" Izuku asked. "Since the departure of the team, we've been keeping track of their families. I sent him to see if you were a descendant of him, and you are a descendant of the Shiba family," G said in astonishment. He then bowed to Izuku and the figures did the same. What?" Izuku said in surprise. "Why, you must be mistaken. I can't be his descendant." G turned the scroll and showed it to Izuku. It showed a family tree that began with the first Shiba head and at the 18th began branching out. At one of the ends Izuku saw his name. "No way." G then reached down to the box and pulled out the flip phone. "Midoriya, you used this yesterday, right?" Yeah, I accidentally used it and ended up in a weird costume." "Wait, how did you know?" "We have symbols hidden throughout Musutafu that alert us if a Nilok appears, but they also detect symbol power," G explained. "That costume you donned was the uniform of the Samurai Rangers." G paused for a moment before asking the teen a question. "Izuku Midoriya, we ask of you to train in the ways of the Samurai Rangers and defend the world." "Huh?" Izuku paused at the question. Wait, you've got to be wrong. Shouldn't the heroes be dealing with this? Besides, I'm quirkless, so I couldn't even stand up to them. The Nilok threat is stronger than any hero. Only the power of the Samurai Rangers is enough to defeat them," G stated. "And quirks mean nothing. It doesn't matter if you're weak. The power will not only protect you, but allow you save those who can't protect themselves. It will allow you to become a true hero." Izuku began to tear up at that statement. Someone is finally saying that I could be a hero. It's all I ever wanted. But then fear began creeping in. Although this whole fighting demons thing sounded terrifying, should I just walk away? No. He's told me so much and asked me to do this. At this point, I have no reason to refuse. I accept. Act 2. Samurai in Training. G grinned at Izuku's answer. "Then let the training begin," G said as the two walked back out to the training grounds. The black figures followed after them. G grabbed 2 training swords and tossed one to Izuku. "First things first. There are 2 types of Nilok. First are the wrathful warriors." G then got into a stance. The black figures surrounded him with their own training swords. "Next to the hordes of Mujas. If you want to get to the Nilok, you'll have to get past them." Izuku then got the idea of the training. "Oh, so you're the Nilok and the Kuriko. The Kuriko are the Mujas and I'm gonna have to fight them to get to you." "That's correct, young Midoriya. Come at us when you're ready," G stated. Izuku took a deep breath before running at them. He swung his sword at one of the Kuriko, but they dodged and slammed their sword into Izuku's side, knocking him to the ground. "Ara! Young Midoriya," G said as the Kuriko ran to Izuku's side to help him up. "Can you stand?" he asked as the Kuriko began helping him to his feet. "Why, yeah, I'm fine," Izuku said as he picked up his sword. "I'm fine." They tried that style again, but it ended in the same outcome, with Izuku on the ground. Perhaps I jumped the gun a bit with the combat training, G said as the Kuroko once again helped Izuku back to his feet. I'm sorry, mentor, Izuku apologized. No, it's okay, well just take your training a bit slower, G said before ordering the Kuroko back to their regular tasks around the Shiba house. The two then walked over to one of the training dummies. Copy my movements, G said. He struck the dummy twice before performing a 360-degree slash. Izuku then copied his movements. He was about to ask G if it was good but was suddenly hit in the back of his head by G's sword. Ow, what the heck was that? I was checking your reflexes, you'll have to be alert at all times, G answered. We'll have to work on those. G walked back into the Shiba house while Izuku continued striking at the dummy. G continued training Izuku for the rest of the day. It finally ended when one of the Kuroko ran up to Izuku holding his phone up. A phone call is here. A phone call is here. Huh, oh thanks, Izuku said, quickly taking the phone. Hey mum, yeah I'm fine. I'm sorry I didn't answer. I lost track of time. Where am I? Izuku quickly looked over at G. Library. G coughed. Library? I'm at a library. Alright, I get it. I'll be home in half an hour. Got it. Bye. Izuku ended the call and put it in his pocket. I gotta go. Where's my bag? Another one of the Kuroko walked over to Izuku and handed him his backpack. Before you leave, G snapped his fingers and another one of the Kuroko ran over and handed Izuku a sheet of paper. It's a training regimen for you. It includes an exercise schedule, dietary plan and training routine. I had the Kuroko make this for you while we were training. It will ensure that you'll be in top physical shape to fight off the Nylok. Thanks mentor Kusukubi, Izuku said, looking through the regimen. So can I tell mum what I'm doing here? No, G coldly replied. Izuku was taken back by the instant response. Really? But this is a lot to take in and. I get it, you don't want to lie to her, but we have to keep the Shiba house and your role as a samurai ranger a secret. Oh okay, I understand mentor Kusukubi, Izuku sheepishly said as he put the regimen into his bag. Thanks for letting me do this. I promise I won't let you down. Izuku bowed before leaving through the large gate. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow young Midoriya. It's only going to get tougher from here, G said as the gate closed behind Izuku. 1 week later. Izuku sat near the entrance of Takoba Municipal Beach Park. G had told him that the day's training would take place there. After a few minutes of waiting, Izuku spotted a couple of the Kuroko running over to where he was waiting, followed soon after by a loud vrooming sound. G then arrived on a motorcycle, screeching to a stop in front of Izuku and the Kuroko. Morning young Midoriya. Morning mentor Kusukubi, Izuku said, a bit stunned at how the motorcycle clashed with the mostly traditional Japanese aesthetic of the Shiba house. I didn't know you rode one of those. I thought it'd be something old-fashioned like a horse. While it's important to preserve tradition, it's wise to utilize modern advancements, G said as he got off and walked over to Izuku. Plus, horses make my hips ache. Oh, okay, Izuku responded to the information he'd rather not known. Mentor Kusukubi, if you don't mind me asking, what are we doing out here? Izuku then asked. When you morph into your ranger form, you are given a boost to your strength, speed and endurance. While it helps to have that safety net, you shouldn't rely on that alone, G explained before one of the Kuroko handed him a book. He flipped through the pages before landing on the one he wanted. He then showed it to Izuku. It showed a previous red samurai ranger holding a gigantic sword that was almost taller than the ranger himself. Each samurai ranger has their own unique weapon to utilize in combat. For the red ranger it's the Fire Smasher. It is a powerful weapon but it takes a lot of strength to wield, G explained. Oh, so we're here to improve my strength? Izuku asked. Correct, G answered. I've done research on this beach and I found that a lot of people have been dumping their trash here for years, so we'll be coming here every day till it's clean to build up your strength. It'll also give us the opportunity to return the beach to its former glory. When they finally walked through the beach's entrance, they were a bit surprised to see that 2/3 of the trash was already gone. I was expecting a lot more trash, Izuku said when he saw the view. That's because there should be more trash. The images I looked at had a lot more there, G said confused. Whatever, you'll pick up the rest that's there. Let's get to work, G said as the two walked down to the piles of remaining trash. Izuku began sorting through the trash and carrying it over to a designated trash pickup nearby. As he rummaged through the trash, G was at his side to advise him. He eventually got to a large metal cabinet. Izuku grabbed it and began to slowly drag it through the sand. Come on, this thing is heavy, Izuku thought as he tried to move it. Do you want a hand with that? The two looked up to see another person at the beach's entrance. He was about a year or two older than Izuku. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. He walked down to the two and picked up the container with ease. It's nice to have some help with cleaning the beach. G blinked at the older teen's arrival. Wait, were you the one who's gotten rid of most of the trash? Yep, the name's Mirio Togata, the teen said as he placed the container on his shoulder. So what brings you down to the beach? I am training my student to build up his strength. G then nodded to Izuku. The younger teen quickly ran to pick up a couple of metal drums. G sat back while the two teens walked to the trash pickup. Izuku Midoriya, it's nice to meet you, Izuku introduced himself to the older teen. Nice to meet you too, Mirio replied. As the two walked to the pickup area, Izuku began to think. Hey, have I seen you before? You look familiar. After a moment, Izuku realized where he'd seen him. Wait, you were at the UA Sports Festival. Yeah, I was. I hope I made a good first impression. Yeah, definitely. Izuku shuddered at the memory of the older teen using his quirk during the event. Izuku then got curious. So why did you come here? He asked. Same reason you came here. My trainer instructed me to clean this place up 5 months ago to build up my strength. Mirio answered. He should be here by now. I guess he's busy with hero work. Wait, hero work? Is your trainer a hero? Which hero is he? Izuku excitedly asked. Hey, I didn't say he was a hero. He's a data clerk at a heroes agency, Mirio replied, and I kinda can't tell you who he works for, breaching contract. Ah right, sorry, Izuku apologized. Hey, don't worry about it. Mirio smiled back. The two kept sorting through the trash for a while longer until G called for Izuku. Young Midoriya, our training here today is finished. Sounds like you're gonna be heading off now, Mirio said as he grabbed another piece of junk. Yeah, I guess I'll see you tomorrow. Izuku waved goodbye as he ran up to G. So are we gonna head to the Shiba house now? Yes, but remember, I said we came here to build up your speed and endurance as well, G said as he put on his motorcycle helmet. So how am I gonna do that? Izuku asked. Simple, by keeping up with me on our way back to the Shiba house, G said before riding away on his motorcycle. Izuku stood there stunned for a few seconds. He was joking when he said I had to run after him. Ah right. Izuku turned to the Kuroko only to see that they had left him too. Okay, he wasn't joking. God, what did I get myself into? Izuku thought as he began running after G. A few days later after school, Izuku made his way back to the Shiba house. He walked through the large gate to meet with G in the training ground. Hey mentor. Hello young Midoriya. G greeted his student. Are you ready to begin today's training? Yeah, Izuku said as he put his bag down. So are we doing more sword training? No, today we'll start testing your symbol power. The burst you gave off when you morphed was strong, but now it's time to see how strong it actually is. G said as one of the Kuroko handed him a stack of papers. You did bring your samuraiser with you, right? Oh yeah, the flip phone. Izuku leaned down to get his samuraiser out of his bag. Young Midoriya, what's that? G noticed a burn mark on the shoulder of Izuku's uniform. Oh it's nothing. Izuku dodged the question as he got out his samuraiser and transformed it into its brush mode. G showed him one of the papers to Izuku. It had the kanji for smoke, yarn, on it. He wrote it out and was engulfed in a large cloud of smoke. After the smoke cleared, G showed him another page. This one had the kanji for sword, Dao, on it. After writing it, a sword materialized and fell to the floor. He continued writing out the kanji one after the other. With each stroke he began getting more and more tired. He had 26 pages left when he fell to his knees. Young Midoriya, are you able to keep going? G asked. Why yeah, I can keep. Izuku was able to do one last stroke before collapsing to the ground. Young Midoriya, the Kuroko ran to the young teen's side while G began to try and think for an answer. What happened? Is he overworked? But that shouldn't be the case. As demanding as the training regimen was, he shouldn't be this exhausted, unless... An hour later, Izuku woke up in one of the rooms in the Shiba house. He looked to his right to see G watching over him. What happened? He asked as he sat up. You collapsed from exhaustion, G replied. Upon hearing this, Izuku lowered his head. Young Midoriya, the training regimen I had the Kuroko draft up was designed to prepare you to become a samurai ranger within a month. As harsh and demanding as it was, it shouldn't have caused you to collapse. G stared at the young teen. You weren't sticking to it, were you? Izuku sat quietly for a second before speaking. You said that the Nylok were hell-bent on the destruction of our world. That they are stronger than any hero. If I want to even stand the slightest chance against them, I'll have to work harder than anyone else because I can't even defend myself from other people, let alone be strong enough to fight the Nylok. This kid, G thought, not being strong enough isn't ideal, but not being able to even stand is far worse. He stated, if you want to get strong faster, then I'll have the Kuroko modify your training regimen, but pushing yourself to the point of not being able to stand isn't the right way to getting stronger. Do you understand? Yeah, Izuku weakly said as he got to his feet. Good, I think we should spend the rest of today's training practicing your swordsmanship. With that, the two headed out back to the training grounds. The next day G sat in the training grounds waiting for his student. Today he had prepared some off-site training for the soon-to-be samurai. As G checked that he had everything he needed for today's training, a frantic Izuku burst through the large gate. Ah young Midoriya, you're here. G stopped when he saw the panic on Izuku's face. Young Midoriya, are you alright? What happened? I am so sorry, mentor. When I was packing to leave school and my friend saw my samuraiser in my bag, he thought it was just a flip phone but he used his quirk on it and I'm sorry, mentor. Izuku apologized as he pulled out his samuraiser, broken and charred. G looked at the broken samuraiser before calming his student down. It's okay, I can fix it, G said before running into the Shiba house. He returned a minute later with his own brown and gold samuraiser. He walked over to Izuku and took the broken samuraiser off him. He wrote the kanji for repair, Zili, and in a flash, it was fixed. There you go, good as new, G said as he handed it back to Izuku. Ah thank you mentor, Izuku said, taking back his samuraiser. Young Midoriya, is everything alright? G asked. Why yeah, everything's fine, Izuku answered. Alright then, G said as he grabbed a bag off the ground. Let's get going, he said before walking to the gate. Wait, aren't we gonna be training here? Izuku asked. No, today's training will require a change of scenery, G said as he walked through the gate. Izuku and a couple of Kuroko followed behind him. Halfway through the group's trek through the rocky terrain, Izuku began to get curious about the training location. Mentor, where are we heading? Somewhere you can train in your element, G answered. Izuku was a bit confused by G's answer. Train in my element? G went on to explain, most of the time symbol power is tied to an element. For the Shiba bloodline it is the element of fire. You'll need to master it to become a samurai ranger. After 2 total hours of walking, the group reached an opening in the tree line. There they saw an old dilapidated building. Mentor, what is this place? Izuku asked. The previous Shiba house, I solemnly answered. This is where the final battle between the 17th team of samurai rangers and Nylok took place. What happened? Izuku asked. The Nylok launched a surprise attack, led by their leader, Master Xandrid. A feeling of dread began to grow in Izuku as he heard the Nylok leader's name. At the climax of the battle, Master Xandrid was able to mortally wound the Red Ranger. However, in his last moments, the Red Ranger was able to seal away all the Nylok back to the Netherworld. Why did you show me this? Izuku asked. I needed to show what is at stake, G answered. This is the responsibility of being a samurai ranger. At any moment, you must be willing to put the fate of the entire world before your own wants, desires and yourself. The group then walked over to the back of the building, where there was a small gravel pit surrounded by a stone courtyard. So what's the purpose of this place? Izuku asked. The chest you brought to the Shiba house contains some of the strongest weapons in your arsenal, G said as one of the Kuroko handed him the red disc, including this, the Lion Fire Spin disc. G whipped out his samuraiser and wrote out the kanji for stone warriors. In a flash, 6 stone figures surrounded the pit. G then continued to explain. There are others like it that store up the symbol power of each samurai ranger throughout history, getting stronger with each generation. How do I use it? Izuku asked. Watch, G replied, using his samuraiser to write out the kanji for sword, Dao. He grabbed the sword that materialized and placed the disc onto the blade's hilt. He walked into the pit and spun the disc. A fiery vortex of fire engulfed the blade. G turned to one of the figures and swung the blade at it. Blazing strike. A fireball shot from the blade and hit the figure. The moment the fireball hit the figure, it was engulfed in flames. He did the same to the figure next, which resulted in the same result. He turned to the final figure. He sent 4 slashes that resembled the kanji for fire, Huo, fire character strike. The moment that wall of fire hit the figure, it created a large crack. So how was that? G asked as he walked out of the pit. That was amazing, Izuku said in amazement, only to notice something. Mentor, your hands. G looked down to his hands. They had several burn marks from the heat emitted from the blade. It's alright, young Midoriya. My symbol power isn't tied to fire, so I'm unprotected from the backlash, and I'm also unable to utilize your disc to its full potential. G held the blade out to his student. So are you ready to wield it? Izuku took off his jacket and grabbed the sword. Yes, I am. Izuku walked into the pit and stared down one of the stone figures. He spun the disc and the blade was engulfed in the violent fiery vortex. Izuku dropped the blade when the flames reached his hand. Ack. You have to focus in order to properly control the flames, G instructed. Izuku picked up the blade and spun the disc, only to drop it again. Come on, he tried it again, to no avail. Damn it, he tried it a few more times, each time ending the same way. Come on, Izuku punched the ground in frustration and anger. He isn't focused enough. Is he distracted by something? G looked down at Izuku's jacket and saw his samuraiser sticking out of it. That's when it clicked. Young Midoriya, earlier you said your friend destroyed your samuraiser. Has something like that happened before? G asked. Yeah, for most of the time I've known Kaken, he has done stuff like that before. Izuku lowered his head. From telling me I'm worthless to shoving his explosion quirk in my face, literally. Then he is not a friend, he's a bully, G stated. Young Midoriya, you can't let him do this to you. You need to stand up to him and tell him you won't let him do this to you anymore. He doesn't get to decide your worth, you do. Yeah, I will. Izuku smiled. Perhaps we should end today's training here, G said as he picked up the sword, only for Izuku to grab his wrist. No, let me try again, Izuku desperately asked, please. Very well then, G said as he handed the blade back to Izuku and stepped out of the pit. Izuku stepped back into the pit. The blade was once again surrounded by a raging vortex of fire. The vortex began to solidify as Izuku tightened his grip on the blade. He turned to one of the untouched figures. Blazing strike. A wave of fire launched from the blade to the stone figure, a large crack forming where the wave hit. He repeated the attack with another one of the remaining figures. Izuku turned to the final figure. He gave another spin of the disc. Fire character strike. Ha! He launched the attack at the stone figure. In an instant the figure went up in a fiery explosion. Izuku stood there in a bit of stunned silence as the flames began to calm and subside. I did it. Izuku looked at G excitedly. Good job, young Midoriya. G smiled at the joy in his student's voice. Now for the last thing for today, he said as one of the Kuroko handed him the pentagonal box. G held it up to show Izuku. This is your most powerful weapon against the Nylok. What does that do? Izuku asked. G grinned as he took out his samuraiser and wrote the kanji for awaken. The box unfolded with the front legs folding out of the sides, the back legs folded out from the bottom before the flat end of the box separated and folded down, finally a head folded out of the tip. The lion folding Zord. The small Zord jumped from G's palm at Izuku, it crawled up his arm and perched itself on Izuku's shoulder. Oh, it's cool, but how is that gonna help me fight the Nylok? Izuku asked. The lion Zord began roaring at him for the comment. G held out his palm and the lion Zord returned to him. You'll see. He placed the Zord on the ground and used his samuraiser to write the kanji for big, da. The Zord rapidly grew to a height of 20 meters tall. Holy whoa, Izuku jumped back in surprise. The wrathful Nylok have two forms. The first form is around the height of a person. When mortality wounded they transform into the second form which ranges from 50 to 60 meters tall. Izuku was taken aback at that fact. That's way taller than Mount Lady. So when that happens, you'll have to use your symbol power to enlarge the Zords to continue battling them. G finished. The lion Zord looked down at the group before bellowing out aloud. Roar, that was a bit loud, don't you think? Izuku shouted, covering his ears. That's why I left it till the end of today's training. We should probably get going before anyone shows up, G said as he used his samuraiser and wrote out the kanji for return. The lion Zord rapidly shrunk down, transformed back into its original form and landed in G's palm. Isn't the Shiba house a bit far from here? Izuku asked in a panic. Not a problem, G said as he wrote the kanji for gate, men. With his samuraiser, a portal then opened that lead back to the Shiba house. Let's go. Wait, you could do that the whole time. Do you know how much I spent on traveling to the Shiba house? Izuku angrily asked. It takes a lot of symbol power to use, so it's only for emergencies, G quickly replied. With that, the group quickly ran through the portal before it closed behind them. 1 week later, Izuku walked through the grand gate of the Shiba house to begin the day's training. As he walked into the courtyard, he saw G walk out of the main building holding something. Hey mentor, Izuku greeted him. Hello young Midoriya, G greeted his student. Are you ready to continue your combat training? Yes I am, Izuku said as he walked over and grabbed one of the training swords. Before we begin, I have to give you something, G said as he handed Izuku what he was holding. It was a training GI. Put this on, then we'll begin. After a minute, Izuku walked out into the courtyard in his training GI. It consisted of a black sleeveless top with the Shiba clan symbol on the right of his chest and the kanji for fire, Huo, on his back, a red belt and long pants. Izuku grabbed one of the training swords and got into a battle stance. He stared down G and the Kuroko, tightened his grip on his sword and then ran at them. Izuku swung his sword and knocked one of the Kuroko to the floor. Another one of the Kuroko began swinging their sword at Izuku, but he managed to dodge the hits and swung his blade back at them, knocking them to the ground as well. 3 of the Kuroko all attacked at once, but Izuku managed to block their attack and knocked them back. The last Kuroko swung their sword at Izuku, but he dodged it, kicked him back and jabbed them with his sword. Izuku then looked up at G. The two circled each other, swords at the ready. Izuku took a breath before running at G. He swung his sword at G, but G blocked the hit and swung his blade at Izuku. Izuku ducked out of the sword's way and pulled out his samuraiser. He wrote the kanji for smoke, yarn, and in an instant G was surrounded by a cloud of smoke. You've improved a lot in the past 3 weeks, young Midoriya, but I'm not so sure you'll be able to beat me, G said as he heard footsteps behind him. He blocked the attack and pushed Izuku back. He then jabbed the sword into Izuku, knocking him to the floor. Not for a lack of trying, G said as he offered his student a hand. Izuku took his mentor's hand and got back to his feet. Yeah, should I go back to practicing with the training dummy? Maybe, G replied. As Izuku began walking to the practice dummy, G swung his sword at the back of the teen's head. On instinct, Izuku reflexively lifted his sword up to block the blow. Or maybe not, G smiled as Izuku looked back at him. Hey, I did it, I blocked it, Izuku smiled as he turned back to G. Perhaps we should continue your combat training, G said before getting into a fighting stance. Izuku smiled back at his mentor before assuming a fighting stance as well. The two ran at each other, slamming their swords against each other. Act 3, Debut of the Red Samurai. Toshinori Yagi walked down the pathway leading towards Takoba Municipal Beach Park. For the last few weeks there had been a surge of villains, so he had been late for his successor's training. A couple of weeks ago, Mirio began telling him about a duo showing up there to train there as well, an old man and a young green-haired kid around his age. The second description that Mirio had given him matched one of a kid he'd saved a few months back. When he reached the park's entrance, he saw the beach was now entirely free of trash. The only thing there now was a glorious sunrise and the two teens. The skeletal man was then caught off guard by someone else sitting nearby. So you must be young Togata's trainer. Toshinori turned to look at who said it. An old man stared back at the skeletal pro. Yes I am, my name is Toshinori Yagi. G Kusakabe, I am young Midoriya's mentor. G got up to shake the man's hand. It's remarkable that young Togata managed to clean up most of the beach in just 5 months. You've trained him well. Down on the beach, the two teens noticed the skeletal man's arrival. Hey, is that your trainer? Izuku asked. Yeah, Mirio replied. Oh, I didn't expect him to be so thin. Was surprised by the skeletal man's appearance. Looks can be deceiving, Mirio replied. He began walking towards the duo. Morning sensei. Morning young Mirio. Toshinori greeted his student. He then looked over to the other teen. I knew it, you're the kid I saved from that sludge villain. He raised a hand to greet the teen. You must be young Midoriya. Why yeah I am, it's nice to meet. Izuku went to greet the man, only to be startled by an alarm on his phone. Huh? Oh shoot, sorry for running off like this but I gotta get going, Izuku said before running out the park's entrance. As Izuku ran down the pathway, G turned back to the teacher and his student. I need to make my leave as well, I have other duties to attend to. It was good to finally meet you Yagi, he said before walking off. After the two left, Toshinori transformed into his muscle form and turned to his student. Now then young Mirio, it is time I pass the torch of one for all to you. You've worked your butt off for this power for months, you've earned it, he said as he plucked a hair from his head. Mirio stared back at the hero with a smile on his face, ready to inherit the quirk of the symbol of peace. Eat this. Later at Aldera Junior High, and remember, all the homework is due Friday, the teacher said as the bell rang. As Izuku was packing his things, a hand reached out and snatched his new campus notebook away. Oi Deku, Katsuki snarled. He stared at the notebook in disgust. Are you still trying to get into UA? I thought I told you that you had no chance of getting in. Kaken, I'm not aiming for the hero course anymore, but I still want to get into the general studies course, Izuku stated. Don't even bother, Katsuki scowled before setting the notebook alight. I'm the only one in this crappy school who's getting into UA, so stay the hell out of my way. He then threw the charred notebook out the window. Katsuki began to walk out of the classroom when he heard Izuku argue back. I'm gonna try my best to get into UA Kaken, you're not stopping me. Katsuki grabbed Izuku by the collar, letting off a few small explosions. What the hell did you say Deku? Why you heard me Kaken, Izuku tightly grabbed Katsuki's wrist. Katsuki stared at Izuku in anger before pushing him to the ground. Whatever stupid Deku. For the past month, that stupid nerd had been growing more and more of a backbone. Katsuki didn't know what caused it but it pissed him off something fierce. After finishing packing, Izuku headed outside to retrieve his burnt notebook. After grabbing it he quickly ran to the back of the school and hid behind the dumpster. He pulled out his samuraiser and wrote the kanji for repair, Shiuli, and in a flash the notebook was good as new. Izuku then put it in his backpack before heading to the train station. The netherworld, a bleak landscape full of dull fog, a crimson river that went on forever, and monsters. One tentacle-faced monster sat staring at a crack in the ground, repeatedly tapping his staff on the ground out of boredom. Then a sudden small red glow began coming through the cracks in the ground. The red glow began to spread throughout the ground and then gave off a small burst of energy. The monster's eyes widened at the burst of energy. What? The seal? It cracked. The monster then let out a chuckle that turned into a haunting laugh before turning to the monsters that surrounded him. Muges, go to the human world, he commanded the mindless horde through the crack. The Shiba house. Izuku stood unarmed and motionless with his eyes closed. He took in a deep breath as several of the Kuroko surrounded him with training swords at the ready. One of the Kuroko ran up to the teen and swung their sword at him. Izuku opened his eyes and caught the blade before it made contact. He then kicked him back. The rest of the Kuroko ran in to attack the young teen. One of them swung their blade but Izuku ducked under it and elbowed him back. Another of the Kuroko thrusted their blade at Izuku but he dodged the attack. He then grabbed the Kuroko by the arm and threw him into another of the Kuroko. Two other Kuroko ran at Izuku from either side. Izuku ducked to the ground right before they swung their swords, knocking each other to the ground. The last Kuroko threw a flurry of slashes at the teen. Izuku dodged the attacks and then threw a kick, knocking the sword out of the Kuroko's hand. He caught it and thrusted it at the Kuroko, knocking him to the ground. After dealing with the Kuroko, Izuku turned to look at G. The Kuroko watched on as G and Izuku circled each other. Izuku then pulled out his samuraiser and wrote out the kanji for smoke, yarn. In an instant G was surrounded by a thick cloud of smoke. Unable to see where Izuku would attack from, G took in a deep breath and closed his eyes as Izuku ran at him from behind. G opened his eyes and swung his sword at Izuku but the teen ducked to dodge the attack. Izuku went to strike but G blocked his attack. The old man then sent a barrage of attacks at the teen. Izuku was barely able to block them all. As Izuku blocked the attacks, he kept an eye out for an opening to attack. When he spotted one he threw his own wave of attacks, forcing G to go on the defensive. After several attacks, G pushed the teen back and pulled out his own samuraiser and quickly wrote out the kanji for impact, Yingxiang, and launched it at Izuku. The teen tried to block the attack and was actually able to hold his ground but was ultimately launched back a few meters, on the ground and disarmed. G ran at Izuku, prepared to strike a finishing blow. As the old man ran at him, Izuku quickly thought of a counter-attack. G raised his sword and swung it down at Izuku. The teen dodged out of the attack's way. Izuku put his plan into action by grabbing onto G's sword. He then threw a back kick at G, disarming the old man and knocking him to the ground. As G went to get up, he found Izuku standing over him and holding G's sword at his neck. Impressive. G laughed as he nudged the sword away and got to his feet. Although we'll have to work on blocking attacks, the Nylok won't just be using physical weapons to attack. Right, Izuku said as he handed G his sword back. They were about to continue training when an alarm suddenly began blaring from inside the Shiba house. What's that? Izuku asked. Oh no, G said in a panic. The two ran inside and into the main room. G slammed his hand down onto the center table, pulling up a map of Japan, centering in on Musutafu. The Nylok have returned and are attacking Tatooine Station, G stated. He then looked up to the teen. Are you ready for this? Ji asked. After a second Izuku nodded before running out to the courtyard. He wrote the kanji for gate, men. A gateway to Tatooine Station materialized and Izuku ran out through it. The Kuroko were not far behind, carrying banners and flags over their shoulders. Nearby Tatooine Station. The pro-hero Death Arms ran down the street while Kamui Woods swung from rooftop to rooftop. The two were making their way to Tatooine Station after reports of monsters appearing out of thin air and attacking the station. So what do you think the situation is? Group of villains with mutant quirks. Death Arms asked the Flora-based hero. Maybe, a few of them have been popping up recently, Kamui Woods replied. A third voice caught the two heroes off guard. Or it could be another instant villain case like in Naruhata 5 years ago. The two looked back to see the turbo hero, Ingenium, running not far behind them. Ingenium, what are you doing here? Death Arms asked. I got invited to a press event, didn't expect to be running into villains, Ingenium replied. The trio ran past several fleeing civilians before reaching the station's entrance. A pit formed in their stomachs when they saw the monsters that were reported. They were horrifying, faces with giant mouths and lacking eyes, clad in bronze armor and wielding swords. What the hell are those things? Death Arms' eyes widened at the sight of the horde. The Lovecraftian monsters turned their heads to the three and charged at them. The heroes prepared themselves for battle. Death Arms threw one of the mindless monsters across the street, only to be attacked by three more. Ara, where the hell did these guys come from? Kamui Woods tried to restrain a group of the monsters, but they kept slashing through his roots. Damn it, whatever they are, they're not going down without a fight. Ingenium tried to fight him off, but all that did was piss him off. Arg, there's too many of them. Somebody call all them. One of the monsters slammed into the hero, knocking him to the ground. The monster was about to run the hero through, but it was knocked back by a small flying object. The object began to distract some of the monsters. The heroes began to hear the sounds of drums approaching. After distracting and knocking back several monsters, the object returned to its master. Everyone looked over to see black figures with raised white banners and flags. After a moment the drums stopped, and a bright red flash appeared from behind the banners. The figures then pulled back the banners to reveal a masked figure clad in red. Izuku stared at the horde of Mujas in front of him. He reached down to his belt buckle and pulled out a black spin disc. He attached it to the spin sword's hilt. He pulled the sword from its sheath and rested it on his shoulder. Red Samurai Ranger, ready. After a moment to collect his thoughts, he charged into the oncoming horde. He slashed a couple of Mujas that ran at him before kicking the one off Ingenium and striking it down. He then helped the pro to his feet. Get the civilians to safety. I'll deal with the Mujas. Mujas, who are you? Ingenium asked. Izuku dodged the question when he saw a trio of Mujas about to strike. He pushed Ingenium out of the way and blocked their swords with his. He spun back around and slashed at all three of them. I'll explain later. Get everyone to safety. The hero followed his orders as Izuku focused his attention back on the Mujas. Izuku struck down two other Mujas. He then ran and kicked another one down onto the tracks. A group of Mujas all swung their swords at him. Izuku raised his sword to block their attack and slashed at them. Stay back. Izuku turned his head to see two teens his age trapped by a few Mujas. One was a girl with pink skin, pink hair and a pair of horns on her head. The other was a boy with medium black hair, red eyes and a scar just above his right eye. I am warning you, the girl shouted before spraying something from her hands. It hit one of the Mujas in the chest. All it did was slightly damage the monster's armor. Izuku ran over and sent out the Lion Zord to attack the Mujas. While the monsters were distracted, Izuku struck him down. Are you guys alright? Izuku asked the two teens. What the? Who are you? The frightened boy asked. I'm someone who's here to help, Izuku said before blocking an attack from a Muga and striking him back. Are you guys alright? Was anyone else with you guys? You are. Yeah, our friends were with us, the pink girl answered. We were gonna go see a movie, but then these things showed up. We ran for the entrance, but we got separated. Izuku began to form a plan. Alright then, you guys run for the entrance and I'll protect you guys. Hey, are you crazy? The boy shakily asked. There are dozens of those guys. Aren't you scared? Terrified, Izuku answered. But it's okay, I'm going to make sure the Mujas won't lay a hand on you. Izuku then sent out the Lion Zord to act as a distraction. You ready? The two nodded their heads. Let's go. The three ran to the entrance, Izuku striking down any Mujas that approached them. They were almost at the entrance when a Muga suddenly jumped at the group and knocked the girl to the ground. Bushido, the boy shouted. He then looked back at the monster as it thrusted their sword at him. Time slowed down for the boy as the blade was about to gut him. Izuku then slammed into the boy, knocking him out of the blade's path. With a sudden sharp jolt of pain, Izuku fell to the ground while clutching his side. The Muga then turned back to the frightened boy, prepared to finish him, only to be hit in the face by the girl's quirk. As the Muga began clawing at its face in irritation, Izuku took his chance and ran his sword through the Muja's gut. Are you alright? The girl asked, seeing that Izuku was clutching his side. Yeah, I'm fine. It only grazed me, Izuku reassured the frightened teens. You two get to the go. I'll handle them. The two teens then ran out the entrance while Izuku ran back to the platform to face the Mujas, cutting down a couple that ran at him. Izuku was about to attack another Muga when he heard something, the sound of an arrow being pulled back. He turned to see a row of Mujas on the other platform, aiming their bows at him. Archers, Izuku thought as he began frantically dodging the arrows. When the Muges began reloading their bows, Izuku took the opportunity and pulled out the Lion Fire spin disc and attached it to his spin sword. He spun the disc and launched a wave of fire at them. Blazing strike, the Muges were engulfed in flames by the attack, causing them to fall to the tracks below. Izuku turned his attention back to the Muges on the ground floor, cutting down and sending waves of fire at those who ran at him. Eventually the Muges that were left all grouped up to attack. As the group charged at him, Izuku gave another spin of the disc and launched 4 slashes at them. Fire character strike. The attack struck the Muges, causing a fiery explosion that disintegrated all of them. All except one. It was launched straight into a wall, cracking it on impact. It stared in fear as Izuku approached it. The Muga now had a choice, either it retreated or become rust on his blade. The Muga took the former, retreating back to the netherworld through the crack on the wall. Izuku exhaled in exhaustion as he placed his sword back on his belt. Now that the adrenaline had worn off, he couldn't ignore the stinging pain in his side. As he clutched his wound, he heard a shout come from behind him. "Hey!" Death Arms shouted at the masked vigilante. "Who the hell are you?" The vigilante looked back at him before pulling something off his belt. It was a flip phone turned into something that looked like a paintbrush. He used it to write out a red holographic streak. After writing the kanji for smoke, yarn, he was engulfed in a cloud of smoke, and when it cleared, he vanished. Death Arms blinked at the sudden disappearance. He looked back at the black figures that arrived with him, and they had vanished as well. What the hell? The netherworld. The tentacle-faced monster sat in the netherworld. He was waiting for more Muges to emerge, so he could send them through to the human world. What he didn't expect, however, was for a Moga to crawl back from the human world. "Why did you return?" the monster asked. The Muga let out a shaky, panicked gurgle. Red Ranger." The tentacle-faced monster's eyes widened. So, the Samurai Rangers still exist. The monster began to think about the implications of what he just learned. He then sent a blast of energy through the Muga, killing it. The master's gonna be furious when he resurfaces. At home, as he and his mum sat at the table for dinner, Izuku glanced to look at the TV. Almost every form of media was covering his battle at Tatooine Station. He felt like a celebrity, even if he couldn't tell anyone about it. The identity of this Red Samurai Ranger is still unknown. The TV then cut to footage of him saving the 2 students while fending off the Muges. "That looked pretty scary. Promise me that you won't ever get caught up in something like that," Inko asked her son after seeing the footage. "I promise." Even though G told him that was best to keep his status as a ranger a secret, he still felt bad for lying to her. After finishing his dinner, Izuku put his dishes in the sink and headed to his room. He sat at his computer and began to search up several internet forums about the Red Samurai Ranger. That incident at Tatooine Station was crazy. Who was that guy fighting those monsters? That fire quirk he has is crazy powerful, so cool. No, he must have a teleportation quirk. No one can up and disappear like that. What was that brush thing he used? He must have like techno magic or something. That would explain that small robot that was flying all over the place. Whoever he was, he saved my life. So manly. Izuku couldn't help but smile at all the talk about him. He almost felt, no, he did feel like a hero. There you have it. Izuku has finally made his debut as the Red Samurai Ranger. I hope you all enjoyed the chapter. I don't know when the next chapter will be ready as my upload schedule is terrible, but when it's ready I hope you'll all enjoy. Make sure to subscribe to Voiceverse Productions for more thrilling crossovers and immersive storytelling, and remember to ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Also, I should mention that the author hasn't updated this story in a while, and I'll try my best milk the anticipation of the team forming. Until next time, heroes, stay tuned for more excitement, and remember, the power of imagination knows no limits. See you in the next chapter.